In the meantime, I'll just do some quick introduction here. First off, apologies for my voice. I'm getting over a cold, so I might be sounding kind of funny. First, I would like to thank you all for the hospitality, in that I'm not actually directly related to Minecraft, so I appreciate being invited here anyway. And I want to express my how impressed I am with how you're putting all this together, both for BetterThanMinecon rather, last year and this year, and just the modding you manage in general to make these amazing pieces of content, despite you all hacking it together on this closed source game with, as the previous panel showed quite clearly, there's a fair bit of quirks and things you have to get around, and to see all this still working so well is quite amazing. So give yourself a round of applause.
Yay, us.
One question I have, did you like the video thing that we had on the opening keynote? Were you with us on the opening keynote?
That was at 5 a.m., so no, I'm afraid not.
Okay, so stay around for the ending keynote.
Yep, that I will.
Okay, if I could play the cities video at the beginning, because I have to go do some preparation stuff in a moment.
Sure.
So, if you could introduce what it is, I'm going to set it up quick.
Right, so this is a quick video we made just recently for a tool we have called the World Viewer, where we can preview worlds and tweak at world configuration parameters in a standalone application that will then allow you to scroll around at a world map type level and see how the world looks, see how the noise works, see how you can, differentiate all kinds of different facets of the world generation. It's going to show a two-dimensional view of a world, but naturally it looks a fair bit better in game.
All right, it's downloading.
Imagine
Actually, the music can stay.
You can actually almost see what happens if you imagine each red one is a city being generated. There are the forests and flora. And yep, this is on YouTube in full resolution. You can see individual buildings and their shape, and there's a tooltip hover in there that tells you details on it. Of course, you can't see that in this resolution. There's the link also posted on IRC in case it's needed.
Yeah, watch version.
All right.
Thank you for that. Right, so some of you have probably heard about Terasology, maybe a few of you have played with it a little bit. But to just introduce it real quick, we started about 4 years ago when our founder, Benjamin Gladson, who's a German, like many others at the time, saw Minecraft and wondered, hey, I wonder if I could write a renderer that looks like that. So he did, and he made it extra fancy because, well, his day job is working 3D graphical effects. He worked on Lords of the Fallen most recently, and what he does is really, really shiny and fancy, and he let some of that slip into the game, which is why Terasology looks a little shinier than the usual type of Minecraft-inspired clone or whatnot. After he got that done, he didn't really do anything with it because he just wanted to see if he could make it work, and he could. And I found him and suggested, hey, we could probably turn this into an actual game, with the idea that Okay, Minecraft is there. You're not going to knock that off its perch very easily, but if we start from scratch with open source and focus on extensibility, we can make a game that's quite something. But of course, open source or not, doesn't really mean anything unless you have a good community and a good base game, which is what we're still slowly working towards, to reaching some sort of critical mass on getting enough people interested in it. We focused over the last 4 years on a lot of things that are missing in Minecraft or could be done better. Our basics cover like the single image for a single texture block that Minecraft added some time ago. We have JSON all over the place, chainsaw or no. Infinite height, module security sandboxing, so that you can't write anything in a module for the game that can hurt your computer. We have internationalization support, including a translation site. We have multi-threaded, both for world generation, like generating and rendering chunks and all that good stuff. And you can make your own threading pools for doing background processing. It's all based on a super powerful and handy entity system, which allows you to do extremely simple, easy things, like you want a creature to move in a particular fashion, you just attach this single component to it and configure it and say, there you go. In the last question on mind test. Yes, mind test and Terasology are sort of almost sibling projects in that we are indeed similar. Mind test is just written in C++ and we're written in Java. That's really it. I keep telling people who ask, hey, can't you rewrite Terasology in C++ real quick? You're looking for mind test. If you want to do it in C++ and Lua, go play with mind test. If you want to do Java, go play with Terasology. They're the two options, really.
Hell. Wait, wrong time.
What was that? All right. Okay, so our goal has been to make the engine absolutely minimal, much, much less than what you have with vanilla Minecraft. The goal is to have essentially no content and no gameplay systems at all in the engine. You really don't have to override or disable anything in the engine level. Physics we have, I'll cover that in just a bit also. We have something we call modules, which are smaller individual working pieces than a typical Minecraft mod. A module is supposed to do one thing and do it really well, and that's it, nothing else. It can contain assets, it can contain code. Usually there are different types of them. But the point is that a bunch of modules together pretty much make up one mod. But by cutting them into pieces, you make everything much more reusable, so that not everybody has to go make their own power system. We actually have a single system for handling any communication between blocks. And you can build power systems on top of that. You can build whatever you want on top of that. And yes, Mojang has said a lot of things that they're trying to do that we've either already done or are doing. We have an actual official modding API at this point. We can generate documentation for it. The longer-term goal is to create a series of modules that we call the IOTA distribution, IOTA being the least amount you can get before something is not subdividable anymore, that contains everything you would find in something like vanilla Minecraft, which includes such basics as just the inventory and health. Anything that low level is not in the engine at all. It's in this IOTA distribution as, here's the minimal implementation you need for this. Now you can go customize it to your heart's content. And everything we have, the engine, graphics config, shaders and such. We don't have the graphic config options for everything yet, so there are a few things you can't disable, which means that some laptops don't run Terasology really well. That's just because nobody has actually added that yet. It's not a super high priority to have backwards compatibility with low-end laptops, since we don't have a ton of even content yet. So we're focusing on that first. Our engine is being, I actually released a first V100 release candidate yesterday, which is the alpha level of the game. And we are entirely under allegiance to semantic versioning, which is XYZ, a major version, a minor version, a patch version. And it's, again, going back to the 1.8 modding talk here, it is amazing to me that you have to actually update your mods even to go between different patch levels, let alone minor levels. When we've now released this V100, or rather we have a release candidate, we might tweak it a little bit more, but when that's released, you write a module for that, it'll work until we hit V2.00, and it may still work after that. And that's going to be a year or longer out. Legal issues. Nope, there are no legal issues whatsoever. We are 100% separate, standalone, written from scratch. And I've even tried myself to stay away from ever seeing a single line of Minecraft code, just so that there's no potential for, hey, you actually went in there and copy-paste the code. No, there's none of that. Everything is written from scratch. License is Apache 2.0 and one of the really free Creative Commons ones. All right. So, point being, it's there, it's ready to mod on, and just looking around at everything that you've put together in here and knowing the pain you have been through dealing with all these middleware projects that do amazing things considering that they're based on top of a closed source engine with lots of null pointer exceptions. It's amazing how much you've created, and I wonder if all that pain had been channeled into something constructive, like actual content. I wonder where we could be today. So that's a quick overview of what Terasology is. Now, why should you care? Red Power standalone energy thingy, I have not taken a look at that. If somebody wants to throw me a link sometime, feel free, and I'll check it out. So the why should you care section, well, it's easier modding. We had somebody came in and figured out, oh, I don't see any electrical circuitry. I want to make some of that. Okay, do it. Over a weekend, he wrote redstone from scratch, essentially. We had circuitry, logic gates, switches, lamps, etc. And it just worked. He did that in a weekend. Later on, he decided, these nice big monitors with computers, I want that. So he wrote essentially like an open computers or one of these types of mods in another weekend. And now we have computers that can run around in the game, display things on the monitor, and interact with other mods through these little module bridges, so you can manage fluids in pumps just through a computer. And again, he did that in a weekend. One guy. That's kind of cool. Another neat thing is that there's been a fair bit of cross-pollination. The Galibi, I hope I pronounced his name right, did a physics mod that some of you might have seen a video of, which he actually based initially on our physics lab Terabullet. I have a link if anybody wants to see it. But essentially, whenever you break a block, rather than it turning into an item, a little sprite that just is two-dimensional sits on the floor, everything turns into an actual physics-enabled cube that'll just bounce around on the landscape. So you could go up to the back of the panel here and just drop a whole pile of blocks like you would drop cheese wheels off a mountaintop in Skyrim. And they just roll right down and gather at the bottom. It works, it's awesome, and somebody else was able to take that and say, hey, I want to do this in Minecraft. And he did it. I don't know if he did it in the weekend or not, but he did. It works, and supposedly it will be released here in January sometime. Threading. We have multi-threading supported. The only thing I think that's forced to be single-threaded is rendering, and that's an OpenGL limitation. Whenever you have chunk generating during world generation, they will actually generate in a thread pool. And you can define in a module, hey, I want a thread pool for background processing. and you can just feed it tasks, and all that stuff will run in a thread pool in the background. Whether that'll actually lead to terrible things or not is mostly up to you in your content. The engine will isolate all this stuff to where no matter what you do, you shouldn't be able to crash the game or do naughty things on the end user's computer. Frames, as in movable objects, I take it? Yeah, it's a whole lot more secure than Minecraft. I'll cover another bit of that real quick. Frames. At this point, we have individual blocks that can move around the world like independent objects. And we've had other things like boats, like, again, more or less a physics block that's just loose in the world, but you can jump on it and drive it around. So that works. Multi-block objects, like big frame, machinery and such, nobody has done it yet, but I don't think that there's actually a limitation to do it. Taking module is probably similar to Minecraft. There's just a game update loop, and you will just register your content to say, hey, I want to be called once a game loop, and then you do what you want to do in that. Let me catch up with the questions here. We have a central sort of formal official server right now, and we update it every time we do a formal release. I can mention now that, well, I was going to mention it later, but I'll cover it now. We have, when you connect to a server, you will be sent the correct modules enabled on that server automatically. It just happens. You connect to it, you get the modules. In addition to that, that works because every time we build a module in our Jenkins server, we update this central meta server that has information about modules. And even if you just load the game and look in the menu and go to the Create World screen, there's a modules button. That'll open a list of all the modules we know of at all. And that includes modules you don't have locally. And you can just go and say, oh, here's this computer module that I have locally. Okay, click it, download. Oh, cool, there it is. All right, play. Done. That's it. World simulation in general, multi-threaded? Well, I guess there's a distinction there between world generation, like initial generations of chunks, and simulating of different systems like water propagation. That one I would have to double check on. We have a water propagation module, but I'm actually not sure at what level it does its thing. All right, modularity overwhelming. Yes, it is. In the game menu, when you create a world, there's something we call a gameplay template. That is essentially like a series of mod packs. So there is core, which is just, again, the engine with an absolute minimal bit of content so that you have a player. Yes, the player isn't even in the engine. So if you play core, that's all you get. You get a series of blocks, a basic world generator, and a player. That's it. Then you can pick something like Terasology Survival, which is our sort of tech module series right now, where there's a little tutorial and a help system, and you can build your standard, here's a, you can make windmills, you can make machines, you can do pumps and power generators, all that kind of stuff. It's there. You enable that mod series, and you're good. And my Minecraft is crashing. That was weird. Can you hear me still? Cool. All right. Was I in the middle of something, or next question? I see cards to the rate of world updates. Yes. I mean, you just have stuff react to the ticks and do what you want. that all questions right now? I'll try to go to the next topic then. All right. So, another real quick cross-pollination type setup. We had the author of Allspawn shown interest in porting his stuff to Terasology at one point, and he started doing it. We started supporting that effort by making a little bridge that would actually load Techno models right out of Minecraft. We currently use .obj base MD5 stuff for models, which works. You just put a model in the right format. You put a little teeny tiny text file that's written in JSON that just says, hey, here's the texture, here's the material, here are the animations, go, you're ready. But since he had a bunch of models already, we wrote a quick little Techno bridge thing so that he could just make his creatures show up in game. So that was cool. However, then he got bit by the bug that many of us suffer from, where he got impatient and really kind of wanted to do his own thing. So he went off and make his own game from scratch, which is fragmentation, which happens to all of us for mods, for games, all the time. And we're trying to avoid that by making this general IOTA distribution of the basic models, but we can do everything like a mineral library, a power system, whatever you need. The more we keep together in a single unit, the more fun stuff we get to do. While Forge and all these tools are great, wouldn't you want to just be able to make content? That would be neat. We had Cal Clavia, again, hope I pronounced that right, and a Kepler Zero fellow show up on GitHub one time talking about multi-game mods, which is another cool concept. Kepler Zero supposedly, I guess, authors Boatcraft, and he had put code in a single repository on GitHub that he would build in two different ways, and one would work in Minecraft and one would work in Terasology. I thought that was pretty cool. Calclavia talked about wanting, Nova API. He wanted to do an API so that you could use things in both games, and later on, Nova API became a thing. We had also tried to work with Spout quite a while ago when they were talking about doing multi-game, but that sort of died off, and eventually Sponge became a thing instead. I don't really know what's going on with Nova API these days. I haven't had time to keep up. All the Lego things, yeah. I'm not sure how active it is right now. The trouble with a multi-game API is that you have to cater to the lowest common denominator. Yep, that happens. It's very familiar to me because everybody working at Terasology is doing it, volunteer, spare time, and a lot of the core developers are full-time employed with careers or full-time students, and, well, sometimes something just doesn't move for 6 to 9 months. But being that everything is open source, anybody can pick it up, take it over, and that's been going well so far. Several times you've had people hop in later and just, oh, hey, this thing's neat, pick it up, go with it, and we'll build it and put it in the game. Endless extensions. One simple example there was that Terasology has a really neat facet-based system for world generation where a feature in world generation is a facet. So that could be a ravine or a mine tunnel or a building or a door in a building. And they all link together in a particular chain. One can update another, one can depend on another, and so on. So you can avoid things like having a ravine generate right through a mine shaft, or whatever you want. You can actually do world gen sensibly before you ever rasterize your world features into blocks. Unfortunately, in a multi-game situation, you would probably just say, hey, I need a chunk of data, give me a chunk of data. While our facet system is based on a higher level multi-chunk and so on. So while we could just say, hey, just produce chunks, that would defeat the purpose of some of our nicer features that can make really large pieces of landscape. All right. So that was some of the pros and cons, and there's a good amount of potential to work together on libraries and other things like that. There is the potential to mod the game, or just try to put your mod in a way that works in Minecraft if you build it one way, and Terasology if you build it the other way. It's pretty cool. So what we want to know as a project is, how can we help? What are the main pain points that you all experience as Minecraft modders? What do you wish you could do? What can we provide to make the modding a nicer experience? And I was going to mention, as an initial example of one of the nice things we do, is this module sandboxing, where we can generate a modding API, documentation. Here you go, here's everything you can touch in the engine. You don't have to worry about security, you don't have to worry about networking, you don't have to worry about individual packets, you don't have to worry about OpenGL. If you want to create a creature, here's the format of your, you make an object file that has to have a few named things in it. Make this teeny tiny little text file over here, you're done. And if you work on code, well, okay, you register a system and tell it, okay, I want this system to be updated every time the game loop goes through. And then you do anything you want, and you can't break anything. You can break your own stuff and content, but you're not going to be able to crash the server. You're not going to be able to access arbitrary files on the user system. You're not going to be able to open network sockets. But at the same time, whatever you do, we will build it in our infrastructure, and we will put it in our meta server, and we will host it, and just there it is. Open the game, there's your mod. Yep, won't go kaboom. I'm again amazed at, seeing this 1.8 modding talk, at the level of technical detail you have to worry about near assembler level stuff. You have to worry about package, you have to worry about rendering. I don't even see that in Terasology. Admittedly, that's because I'm not a 3D wizard. I don't mess with the OpenGL architecture all the time. But you want to render something? Just make the model, declare a texture, say that's my icon, and that's it. Everything else is handled. Maxwell asked if the sandboxing makes it hard to integrate mods. No, the sandboxing is meant to give all the modules together an ability to work and interoperate freely. You're just isolated from the features of Java that would be a security risk. So that is Java IO file, it is sockets, and you're only given access to approved parts of the engine. So you can't just say, I want to make a module that disconnects this guy. I mean, you're not going to be able to go and say, hey engine, give me the ID of this user so I can kick his ass. That doesn't work. You have a, you're in the sandbox, but so are all the other modules, so you can interact very easily. Right into mod communication. You just say, we have a little module.txt file for every module. In there, you just say, I have a dependency on module B. Now, all the classes in module B are available to you to use, and you can just use them directly. Now, that's code, and content, you can say, hey, this creature over here should have a texture that's asset C from module B. But for extensibility is what's really tricky, in that, okay, I have a creature. I made a creature in my mod, and this other mod over here, module, is going to make that creature more red because red is better. And what you do is you say, okay, I want to modify, I want to delta, I want to make a change to this thing over in this other module. And either you just attach a new component and say this component should apply to this creature and make it red, or you can go in and actually edit the config from that mod. And we try to avoid any kind of hard-coded code dependency, to where you can just say, generally all you want to do is just attach components to entities, and entities is anything. It's a creature, it's an item, it's a block, it's a UI. Generally, you just interact with things between them with events, throwing events, and reacting to them. Let me catch up with questions here. Alright, largest number of people on a Terasology server at the same time. We have not tried a whole lot of stress testing yet. I think from just like events, we've been up to 10 people, a dozen people, and we haven't really noticed any lag. But again, we haven't really tried to provoke it. It would be great to do that sometime and actually see, hey, can we stress the server? How many people can we put on here? I literally have no idea how many people we can support, but we haven't really had much trouble yet. And we have some advanced ideas for Engine V2 that potentially could include multi-world, multi-node, so you can have multiple server machines actually servicing the same world at the same time, so you can fit more people in there, and that kind of stuff. And let's see. MC Moss have learned to do crazy rendering stuff. Yes, because you needed to. And what happens if you want to load a custom format with skeleton animation? If something doesn't work the way it is right now, the nice thing is the engine is open source and we react to pull requests very quickly and very nicely, I might add. There's no yelling at people or anything like that. So pretty much, if our rendering doesn't do what you want to do right now, let's hook it up together and that will benefit everybody. Doesn't that limit what's possible? I'm not sure what that refers to since the questions I'm getting confused about. What about optional dependencies? This has been a thing we've been wanting to do something more formal about for quite a while. Right now, you can actually use one module from another in the sense of declaring this entity should be prefabricated with these components and put components in this prefab from a different module that doesn't even have to be enabled. If it isn't enabled, it just won't work. It will crash the game.
One mod as a thing, and then he says, yeah, let's have the NI mod enabled. The communication between them, but the mod that is processing isn't on the not enough items mod. So the user can decide, do I want to add not enough items to have this feature enabled in the other mod?
I might have to look at that a little deeper to understand it fully, but I think in short we can support that. It just may be that we don't have a good use case for it yet. I'm running way behind the questions here. What if you want to worry about packets? That one is to the point where you'd probably want to suggest adding an engine feature where you can make that an optional thing you can worry about. We've talked about adding like Android level permissions to modules at some point, to where if you want to allow a module access to an engine feature or even a Java language feature, you can do so, and you'll present the user with an actual permissions prompt to say, hey, this module is requesting expanded permissions to do X, will you allow it? Alright, Sky, how possible is it to make something run Terasology mods in Minecraft? As in take a Terasology module and run it in Minecraft. It depends a lot on what it is, in that if you just want to share a graphical asset of some sort, that's fairly straightforward. You probably need to load it a little differently. Code is going to be a lot trickier, like say a world generation feature. We imported custom origin at one point, and probably another couple Minecraft mods here and there, where as long as you have some algorithms that are actually separated from the architecture of the game, you'd be able to reuse them fairly easily. But of course, you can't just write a single thing that will work in both cases without some sort of API like the Nova API.
Well, actually, I was kind of like, would it be possible to write something that would load Terasology modules in a way that works in Mine, like to load Terasology mods in Minecraft, like a mod that works like Nova to load Terasology mods into Minecraft?
Yeah, I mean, you'd need some sort of bridge module for that, which is halfway to Nova, I would think.
So it's possible but not practical.
That sounds right. But it's going to heavily depend on the actual content in question. Alright, Barbas asks about the username system. We do not have a central username system like Mojang does, because we are not a commercial project. I'm personally paying all our hosting costs out of pocket right now. Most of it gets covered by donations, and we just turn them into code bounties instead. I think that's more fun, and I'm not hurting, so I can cover it. As a result, we don't have, as said, a central server that can handle a lot of loads, so we've resisted making a central username system. Currently, when you start the game and you join a server, we use a certificate-based approach where your username gets assigned to a certificate you generate locally, and it does the whole private public key type thing, so that if you connect to it later, you'll be reconnected to your original player object. And then if you wanted to, you could export that certificate out of your client locally and put it on a different machine, and you would connect to your existing player object again. Nikki asks about Scala or Groovy mods. Yes, we can support, I think, theoretically any JVM language. We currently have a Scala lib module, which embeds the Scala as a library file. That one module is exempt from our module sandboxing. It has a custom build in Jenkins, but it otherwise counts as a normal module. So you should be able to say, I want to depend on Scala lib, and then write your stuff in Scala. We need to add a little more infrastructure support for that, so you can more easily do it, like a little flag in your module.txt saying this module should use a Scala build. So that's doable. Still reading through here. Toothwitch asked for an applet. We have an applet, and it has worked. I would need to check right now if it does work currently. I've just upgraded our infrastructure, so I wouldn't be surprised if I knock something out. But yes, we have and have maintained an applet. And for the future, we've even looked at going to use libgdx instead of LWJGL. I can't pronounce acronyms. To where we can actually also offer an Android facade to the game, so you can run Terasology on an Android device as a client with no changes. I mean, you're going to have a little bit of different UI code, of course, on the two different ones, but it works. We have adopted a different project called Destination Sol, which is a simple little space arcade shooter, which is based on libgdx. We adopted it specifically so that we could test out some of our libraries on it and learn from it on how to do a libgdx-based project and eventually bring Android to Terasology. It even has an HTML5 facade that may be possible to do. And I noticed that the latest version of libgdx actually offers support for Blackberries. So if you've really decided that you want to write for Blackberries, maybe one day you can do Terasology on Blackberries. I wouldn't quite put my money on that though, but if somebody really wants to, maybe one day it'll happen. View distance presets are named a little funny right now. Legally blind is really, really, really narrow, like, I'm not sure, 3x3x3 probably. We need to make them a little bit more sensibly named. Alright, I've caught up the questions, hooray. And yes, eventually, maybe HTML5. It depends a little bit, because we are using some sort of dark Java magic in some places with our entity system and reflection and all those kind of things. Some of those don't always work too super well on some different contexts like Android or HTML5. libgdx also claims that it can, prepare things for iOS, but just like you could with, I forget the name of it. There was some Java to, I forget it. Anyway, it's going to be limited how much will work, and we use some fancy stuff, so we need to look at the individual things. Kubuksu says somebody wrote in libgdx that turned up to simply to write the box and do pure OGL. Yeah, we haven't looked at it very deeply yet. Maxwell asked about chunk system. Yes, we have a chunk system. Our chunks are 32 by 64 by 32, I think. 64 being the height. And they are layered. We have infinite height, so you can keep going till whenever. We recently released a nicely updated caves module, which you just enable in any world, and it'll make caves infinitely to background noise. One moment. All right, background noise. Hopefully, one now. So yeah, libgdx. It's definitely possible that it's too awkward to really use it well. It's an option for the future that sounds curious, but of course it's good to have some experts actually point out, hey, here's some potential problems with it. What can we do about it? Will it help, or should we not bother? It's it's up to what the community wants. We are very community based in that sense. We will adjust to whatever people want to work on. All right, I think that's most I had as far as the lineup. The meta server and the auto downloadable modules from either a server or a central service is a cool thing, and I have it noted here that it came up on the panel yesterday. Why can't we do that already? I know CPW mentioned it on Twitter a few days ago. I chimed up on that. Why isn't it already done? And the problem being that there's some lack of a trusted central authority. And even if somebody like Mojang did it, it might not be ideal. Like when Valve decided, hey, let's monitorize Steamworks. They are the central provider, but they didn't quite succeed very well at that. So I don't know if Mojang will come up with something interesting there. We're trying to do it, and we're trying to do it the open source, transparent, no money involved type way, and hoping that this will be a good infrastructure we can offer to people that'll interest people and get them to use our stuff. Caustic, a rendering library in Java. It rings a bell. I don't generally do any kind of 3D wizardry myself. I am more a logistics guy. I handle the backend, the servers, project organizing, and so on. So I don't know if any of our 3D wizards have looked at it. Light update problems from cubic chunks. We wrote a system that regenerates light after a certain vertical distance. So you could essentially have an underground cave system with the ceiling high enough and you would get normal light again. I guess from a realistic perspective that wouldn't necessarily make sense, but from a technical perspective it helps a lot because then you don't have to keep track of what's happening a kilometer up in the air that impacts me down on the ground. And on top of that, if you make a cave system with a kilometer to the ceiling, it would be kind of boring if you couldn't see anything. So you'd probably come up with an excuse like, mushrooms that are luminescent and grow on the ceiling to explain why you have a sky in a cave system. And yeah, Microsoft may do bad things to Minecraft, and I know the modding community is very skeptical, and probably rightfully so. The players probably don't care all that much, but Minecraft wouldn't be what it is today without the modding community. You all made it happen, not Mojang. They just hit the right timing and got all these people interested in a really neat sandbox world that then exploded thanks to modding. I think that actually is it as far as timing goes. AC, are you around here somewhere? Are you doing your thing next, or I'm happy to answer any more questions. I'm gonna check IC in the background real quick. All right, well, thank you everybody for your attention. Content-wise, yep, Chess and Go is one of our contributors and is glad to poke holes in what's going on these days in our documentation and content and so on. We have focused a huge amount on architecture and extensibility and making a good foundation. We do not have a whole lot of content yet. We have these few gameplay templates, and you can play for a few hours in Dressaria's survival all throughout the ages and look at the neat things in Light and Shadow. But we don't have a ton of replayable content yet, and that's where we need modders. So if you've ever been curious to expand your horizons and have your stuff work in a different way, come check it out. It's easy, and we're happy to support. And feel free to come join us on Terasology on Freenode, which is where our IC is at. And I'm sure you can Google and find everything else if you want to.